When President Trump came into office, he possibly thought that he would be able to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. That did not turn out to be the case, with Vladimir Putin playing the hardball. Well, I think there are a few things that India could have done better in managing its relationship with the United States. What Donald Trump did in 2016 is that during the 2016 campaign is that he made global trade a bad word.
US President Donald Trump has rubbed many countries, world leaders the wrong way. But is he doing it for America? Is it America first, or is it an agenda of Donald Trump in what he thought he promised to his country and is delivering on? To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by George Varghese. He's a resident editor at The Hindu, senior journalist. He's also covered Trump administration in DC as the Hindu correspondent for Washington, DC, and the two very important elections. George, thank you so much for joining me here. Let's decode Donald Trump for our audience here. The first term of President Donald Trump was very different from this term. But is this a man who's honest, forthright, doing what he promised? Or is there more to what he's doing right now?
Well, his second term is different from the first in the sense that he has come back with a kind of understanding that he was completely wronged by the American media, American system, America's own bureaucracy, which did not allow him to function. So that is a belief and faith that he has deeply ingrained in himself because of the way his first term went. And then he's come back, and now he thinks that he has a better sense of people. He thinks that he's very convinced that he now knows it better than the first term. So if he could not actually push through a lot of his policy initiatives in the first term, because he was dependent upon the conventional or the traditional Republican politicians and US permanent bureaucracy in Pentagon and at the State Department. So this time he thinks that he is able to, or he will push to dismantle them. If he cannot dismantle them, definitely have his say and his writ run in policy matters, including in foreign affairs. So that is something that is very strong in the way he's thinking and acting in his second term. He is also unfettered from the obligation to run for a third term, though he's
That's
going
right.
to say that. Yeah. So this is his final term in that sense. So he thinks that he can push the envelope as much as he wants to. So that is what makes his second term different from what his first term was.
Okay. Was India too naive to put all its eggs in the Trump basket?
Well, I think there are a few things that India could have done better in managing its relationship with the United States in the last 10 years that including during Trump, but including which also includes the Biden presidency in the interim. So we have to understand, it is a pretty plain fact out there in public that all countries have turned extremely nationalistic at the moment. India
That's right.
itself is no exception from that thing. We
Yes.
ourselves are more eager to have our own manufacturing base. We ourselves have increased tariffs on many heads in the last 15 years because we want to create a domestic manufacturing sector and we incentivize our manufacturing sector. So all over the world, countries after country thinks that global trade in the previous era. What Donald Trump did in 2016 is that during the 2016 campaign is that he made global trade a bad word. The idea that uh, global trade and its rules and the forces that determine the global market, they take precedence over national sovereignty and the particular interest of a particular nation state. That idea has been buried with the
Hmm.
2016 campaign of Donald Trump. The Democrats who came after Hillary Clinton had to really face a backlash
Hmm.
for opening up American trade. Uh, America turned anti-trade. Generally speaking, whatever Donald Trump did in his first term in terms of rolling back trade, uh, Joe Biden could not actually bring them back. It is not that
Hmm.
trade is decreasing or American trade deficit is increased, but the intellectual and political environment against trade and the argument that too much trade is destroying the domestic base and particularly the domestic middle class and the labor class, that is now deeply ingrained in the United States, in many other parts, and certainly in India. So India could have read that. You don't need to interpret it. I think it is just out in the public. Everybody is saying it. At that point in time, when India is trying to deal with its own development strategies, uh, its own economic strategy, we could have taken that into account more rigorously and seriously than we did. So the trouble with the Trump administration right now is not exactly or entirely about the tariff lines on few products and say whether India, how much India could open up its agricultural sector. Those are all individual components of
Right.
this. But there is a larger picture, which is that uh, nationalism and national sovereignty and autonomy are on those claims are on the rise in most part of the developed democracies.
Okay. You wrote a brilliant piece, George, on strategic autonomy is alive, neoliberalism is dead, India's takeaways. And no better way of explaining strategic autonomy than the statement by India, where they have absolutely put their position forthright over there when it comes to America, saying that you are buying more from Russia, Europe is buying more from Russia than India is. But do you think the strategic autonomy is something that's here to stay, or is it about who's going to blink first?
Well, I think strategic autonomy is a term which was actually sullied and berated uh, by some segment of Indian strategic thinkers. In fact, that is one point on which I argue, and according to my observation, the critiques and a lot of critics and a lot of supporters of Prime Minister Narendra Modi get that aspect wrong. So many people actually thought, both sides, many people on the left of India's political spectrum accused him of siding entirely with the United States. And many people who are his supporters said that, okay, this is a way to go more aligned with the United States. Let us have a strategic embrace, a lock-in with whatever the United States does, so on and so forth. So critics and cheerleaders both did actually misread Prime Minister Modi on that count. So, in fact, if you refer to what former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran wrote the other day, these are, I mean, the very people who actually, if you observe Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy, there is a continuity of strategic autonomy, which essentially means that we don't have alliances that lock India into the interests and moves of any country, while you try to make relationships robust with as many countries as your strategic interests dictate. Now, though the Modi government and its key figures would not really say it in so many words. I mean, there was some hesitation using that phrase, strategic autonomy, because of its association with the previous Congress governments and particularly Jawaharlal Nehru's non-alignment movement, etc. So you have new formulations that have come up, which is that we are not non-aligned, but we are multi-aligned, to cite S. Jayashankar's phrase. Now, recently, like last 1 year, in the last 1 year or so, Mr. Jaishankar has coined a different phraseology, which is about in foreign policy also we have a sabka saath, sabka vikas foreign policy that we have multiple alliances, multiple alliances. So regardless of how you call it, I think there's a deep sense of independence and autonomy, which is also linked to India's civilizational heritage and its very brutal experience with British colonialism. All that actually we have that memory, and therefore India continues to have that strand, which is strongly uh, built, ingrained in our strategy.
Right.
However, yeah, as we've seen, there have been arguments about okay how India should be part of a U.S. strategy for Asia, therefore Quad, and therefore uh, how closely we can move with the U.S. plans in Asia, and particularly in connection with China. All those things have been in the mix, but actually, I think this is a moment of clarity because what Donald Trump says and does is not entirely a haphazard, random thought that his personal views are being expressed. I believe and I think very firmly that he says things that a lot many people in the US system would think, and there is a logical sequence to that. And therefore, India will have to take that seriously, not as an aberration that is brought about by a maverick president, but it is also reflective at some level of a systemic thought that may not always be heard the way Donald Trump would be saying it.
Absolutely, because George, all through his campaign trail, many in India might not be following or might not have heard the entire speeches, but they only stuck to the fact that he was praising Prime Minister Modi, not the latter part where he actually spoke about how India has been tough with US on trade, and that if should he come to power, he's going to be tough with India. And he is walking the talk. So for those who are surprised when you talk about common man and people in India, I can understand. But policymakers, I'm sure, were listening to what was happening. So this should not shock them, these decisions. Although there are some others that we'll be discussing, like Pakistan, that did come as a shocker. But this position that Trump has taken certainly should not be a shocker to the administration.
The US administration?
The Indian administration, they were listening to him all through the campaign trail. He was hard on India. Every time he praised Modi, he also said how bad India is when it comes to trade and tariff.
Right, right. Yeah. So, yes, India's trade and tariff is his favorite topic, so he speaks about it. But there are other elements also of the overall US strategy, because you take the case of China, for example. Everybody in the United States actually do share the view in Democrats, Republicans, Trumpians, non-Trumpians. All of them have more or less a shared view that China, which was a partner, has turned an adversary. And
Hmm.
all of them also believe that China's rise as a global power has been aided and facilitated by the United States cooperation and support for China in terms of trade, in terms of support at WTO, as its admission into WTO, and into the global trading system, etc., etc. Now, how so therefore what do you do? So therefore you have one argument, which is that okay, to contain China or to resist China uh, taking over supremacy in Asia, you sort of support the growth of other countries, development of other countries around China. So that is one of the main reasons that is often cited as India, one of the strategic, the bedrock of India-US strategic partnership. But at the same
Right.
time, we cannot be not mindful of the fact that this is again, it is not an interpretation. You have enough US congressmen saying it in congressional hearings. I have reported it, I have seen it, I've heard it. Just last week, I mean, if you look at John Mearsheimer, he's not an enemy of India. He's just a realist commentator, a scholar of the United States. He says that the rise of China was facilitated by the United States. So anything that you do to counter China's rise cannot create another problem which is comparable to China. As in, like, you cannot be allowing India to be a force that creates the same problem as China does to them. So while there is a lot of strategic convergence between India and the United States, the way US strategy understands Asia and India's neighborhood has multiple components.
Hmm.
India US bilateral ties is one of those, as any US State Department official that you would have interacted with in many years of your own
Yes.
reporting would tell you that we have a relationship with Pakistan, we have one with China, we have one with Bangladesh. You shouldn't be complaining, or you should not be taking up that as a hindrance in our relationship with you. So now that is a position. If I am a US realist, I am a US strategist. That is a legitimate position that they would take. The trouble is when we also want to take that position, when India also want to take that position, when we want to have your independent relationship with Iran, with Russia, and for China, for
Yes.
that, then the strategic autonomy question comes into play, and it creates friction. So that is what I argue, that these are structural issues. It is not only about a maverick president who is going unhinged. That is not at all the case. He is saying things that others may not say, but only think.
Okay, let's talk tariffs. We're looking at not just increased tariffs, but Trump's decision to now impose more tariffs because India continues to buy oil from Russia could be disturbing. But how does this play out? Is this about India? How long can India hold out? Because at the end of the day, these tariffs are going to impact American consumers as well, George.
Well, I think, again, India's statement about India's commercial transactions with Russia in the of oil, that explains the fact, or basically puts that upfront. Uh, Russia's energy trade with Europe continues. Uh, Russia's and China's trade with United States on critical minerals and a lot of other things continue unabated. So the idea that actually India's oil commerce with Russia is the real issue here, it actually beats logic. It really does not add up. Because if that had been the case, it has been the case for all this while. It did not start yesterday. It did not start with the Ukraine war. And in any case, India's relationship with Russia, while has been an irritant, I mean, we're not saying that it has not been an irritant. All administrations, including the Democratic administrations, have raised this point with India continuously. Particularly India's defense ties with Russia, has always remained a problem in India's ties with the United States. But I think with something which we cannot see, or which is not apparent, is happening in this conversations on the public statement or the rhetoric about Russia.
Yes.
I think there is something more than meets the eye there. This is just I'm just guessing that, because it did not happen yesterday, right? The Russia thing. So
Yeah.
suddenly, why is it a big issue?
In fact, if there has been a shift, it has been by Trump because initially, when he came and he was siding with Putin, we thought we were on the right side all through. And now it just feels like Trump has decided to support Ukraine and not Russia because they're not, again, quote unquote, listening to Trump on the ceasefire. Um, is diplomacy being played in a way that is utterly chaotic, and nobody can predict what's going to happen tomorrow? That's how chaotic this looks to me.
That's very true. And in fact, thank you for raising that point, actually. So that is the only thing that has changed in the last couple of weeks, which is that when President Trump came into office, he possibly thought that he would be able to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine.
Hmm.
That did not turn out to be the case, with Vladimir Putin playing the hardball. And so there is uh, perhaps that is one reason why suddenly he's latched on to this Russia thing as a red flag against India. Possible, but otherwise there is nothing substantially has changed in India's own relationship with Russia in the last 2 weeks. In fact, One would have thought when Donald Trump came to power for a second term that this Russia issue would now cease to exist as an irritant in India-United States relationship because Trump himself, was seeking to reset America's relations with Moscow, Washington's relationship with Moscow. He said it publicly. He said, "I am looking forward to a summit with Putin at the right time, etc., etc." So one would have thought, so a major irritant in the India-US ties, which has existed for a long time, but that never blew up beyond proportion, would now gradually fade away, at least during the Trump presidency. And if the United States and Russia could actually reach some kind of an arrangement, then there would be much better balance between India, Russia, and US triangle in terms of that dynamic that could also help India navigate better with its China. All that thing we thought, I think suddenly, as you rightly said, is completely upended, and it is a completely entirely new mix. India is opening its own conversations with China on one hand. The Trump administration, which in the first term were actually turned around the US policy on China so much that from accommodation to containment, that fundamental shift happened during uh, Trump won
Yes.
vis-a-vis China. He is
Yes.
looking at China again as a potential uh, 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 not partner, but definitely some with someone or
You
a
can do
country that
business with a country you're okay doing business with. I mean, he
right.
wants to continue doing business. But George, again, because we're talking about chaos, there are some policies of Trump that Trump watchers like you and I were anticipating, expecting. Some maybe we were stunned by, but some completely shocked us, and that has to do with Pakistan. A complete shift in America's policy when it comes to this region, the Indian subcontinent, shifting away from New Delhi, going so close to Islamabad, or should I say Rawalpindi, rather than Islamabad, that today we're looking at a possibility of not a hyphenated two-country visit, but maybe just a standalone Pakistan visit by Trump. And he may not come for the Quad summit at all. That could also be that's also in the realm of possibility. What's really happening here?
So I think there is a bit of a paradox in India's own position on Pakistan and what India's expectations are from the United States with regard to Pakistan. Because on the one hand, India's public position is against hyphenation. We want that de-hyphenation to prevail. So now, when you have an entire public diplomacy, which is essentially to repeat that point about dehyphenating from Pakistan, and your entire global outreach has been Pakistan centric. So paradoxically, you are actually bringing Pakistan into your relationship with all these countries. So I do not know how that strategy adds up. So India will have to have a policy of uh, completely ignoring Pakistan in its relationship with all other countries. See, that is something that India has to do first of all. Now, for all you care, I mean, there is no rational reason for the US, for the US finding Pakistan to be an extremely valuable ally. All of us
I
are agreed.
agree.
But at the same time, we have to also appreciate the fact that Pakistan has always, is never been entirely out of the US orbit, or Pakistan has never been completely expelled or ejected from US strategy calculations forever. And now, uh, some of the officials that I spoke to in Washington, D.C. recently, so they cite counterterrorism,
Iran.
rare, rare earth,
Iran.
Iran are also three components, and which they try to say that it is a narrow partnership with Pakistan, whereas people who are pro, who are more upbeat about India, still even in the midst of all this chaos, say that the partnership with India is broader, sweeping, strategic, long term, etc. What deals with Pakistan is very narrow, focused on one or two, three issues: the regional stability, that is Iran maybe, and rare earth and counterterrorism. Well, that may be the case, but as we see, perhaps again, Trump is using Pakistan to troll India more than any
I
strategic
agree.
value. Yeah.
All right. Now, before I let you go, the final question: how can Modi really handle Trump? What can India, what can New Delhi really do to bring this relationship back on track? Not because it's America alone, because it's a very important strategic partner today for India. Whether it's net security that we're looking at, defense cooperation that we're looking at, containment or countering forces that are aggressive in the region, particularly China. Looking at alternatives in the supply chain routes, all of that. America and India would have to work hand in hand. So, in such a scenario, how can Modi handle Trump?
Well, I think the immediate challenge is, uh, I would say, establishing uh, workable, sustainable channels of communication in President Trump's political uh, advisory council or brains trust at the White House and surrounding him. That is, I mean, so far we were talking about the structural reasons and geopolitics, but there is something which actually is not been going well for India in the recent years, which is that India's ability to be in communication with the key members of the presidential team and his political council, so to speak, that is significantly been diminished at the moment. Even during President Trump's first term, Indian diplomats and Indian uh, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, External Affairs Ministry had very good advocates in his orbit who would argue India's case. From what I understand, that those channels have been broken. So the new people there on both sides, in the White House also, that is pretty much an entirely new team, and the Indian diplomacy is also being guided by a set of new people. So I think we need to really work on opening and building those communication and uh, communicating with them about India's the same point actually the same points that we all talk about. India's rise is not a threat by any means to the United States, and India has its own development imperatives, which compels it to give protection to its farmers, to ensure that it has a robust manufacturing sector. These are points that will have to be communicated effectively to the people who have the time to listen. I mean, there is we putting out a statement here and having a TV debate may not actually reach the president of the United States. So we must uh, build or revive those channels through which we have back channel communication with President Trump and his advisors. I think that will be the first step for India, for Prime Minister Modi. But as I said, this is a long game right now. I think it will take some time before we can mend this relationship back into normal route of its flourishing.
On that note, George Varghese, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Geeta.